You had that announcement with Queensland on the Gonski funding during the week, completing all the state agreements. Quite an achievement. It's been reported as effectively meaning government schools will receive 25% of funding from the federal government, up from 20%.
Yep.
This also means there's a firm plan to fully fund public schools by 2034.
Yeah.
100% of the schooling resource standard, more than it, and this was first recommended by the Gonski Review in 2011.
Yeah.
Is this actually going to happen?
It will, because of the agreements that we've now struck. This is historic, mate. This has never happened before. We talked about the cuts to health that Tony Abbott made a minute ago. They also cut funding to schools, to public schools, more than $30 billion ripped out of our schools. We're still paying for that today. You know, the real problem with ripping that money out is that over the course of the last 10 years, the number of kids finishing high school in public schools has gone backwards, not by a little bit, by a lot, from 83% down to 73%. This is happening at a time where it's more important to finish school than it was when you and I were at high school. This is about turning that around, making sure more kids finish school, so then more kids go on to TAFE or uni. They get jobs that pay more money, they pay more tax, they create more businesses, more jobs, they create a stronger economy.
If you're sitting here and your kids go to public school, as mine do, I've got to say, but as many viewers would, what does this practically mean for your kids? And does it mean anything, given we will only see it fully rolled out by 2034?
Oh, well, it means more money every year for the schools. It means not just cash. It's not a blank cheque. This is money tied to real reforms to help kids who fall behind when they're little to catch up. Because if you can help a child catch up early, they're more likely to keep up and finish school.
Well, what else? How does it practically roll out?
So at the moment, we do a NAPLAN test when kids are 8. My boy Jack's in 3rd grade. He's just done that test. It's too late at the age of 8 to know whether a child is keeping up. So this will help to fund a phonics test and a numeracy test in kindergarten or prep or year 1 to identify the kids who need more help. And it'll fund the teachers and professionals to intervene early to help those kids who are falling behind through something called catch-up tutoring. Individualised support for kids, where you get them out of a class of 30 into a class of 3 or 4 with one professional, and they can learn as much in 6 months as other children would normally learn in 12 months. In other words, they catch up.
And later in life, high school, what will it mean for high school?
Well, more individualised support for children that are either falling behind or can accelerate faster, but also more mental health support. You know, we know, particularly at high school, lots of mental health challenges that explain why kids are either absent or they're falling behind. So the sort of counselling and psychologists and extra mental health support will make sure that kids do better at school.
All right. Well, story in the Sunday Telegraph this morning, boys making horrible comments about young women on social media. What's your reaction to that story?
Disgusting. You know, and I think any dad looking at that would be disgusted by it and would hope that their son would never be involved in something as despicable as that. You know, I think there's a role here for schools in making sure that we're teaching young boys good behaviour. That's why we're rolling out $70 million in consent and respectful relationships education for boys when they're young. But it's not just what happens at school. We've got roles as dads here to make sure that we raise our boys properly. When we hear our mates talk about women in the wrong way at the pub or in general conversation, we've got to call that out as well. I think that what we're doing with banning access to social media for young people under the age of 16 is important here as well. You know, if I know how old your kids are. If they're seeing the sort of crap that Andrew Tate and people like that talk about, then that sort of toxic cesspit can affect our kids.
There's been a lot of talk about this series Adolescence. I confess I haven't seen it, but I have heard about it. Are you aware of its content?
Yeah, I am.
Have you seen it?
Talking to my wife about it last night. It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
We saw in the recent international student numbers that we had 200,000 international students come here in February. Of the 335,000 we have coming into the country at the moment, 335,000 net people, 40 to 45% of them are international students. What's your plan to arrest this increase in net migration caused by students? Because you tried student caps and you couldn't get it through the parliament.
Yeah, well, I think Peter Dutton blew his credibility on immigration when he voted against it. You know, he beat his chest a year ago and said he was going to have caps on international students, and then he opposed it. If they opposed that, they got into bed with the Greens to stop that. We achieved the objective in another way through a ministerial direction that we put in place in December. And I can tell you that the number of visa applications from international students today is about 30% lower than it was a year ago, and that's because of the changes that I'm making.
But Australians are right to be sceptical, aren't they, of your budget prediction? You can pull net migration down to 225,000.
No, because international students are a big part of that. And the two things that we've done are increase the visa charge for international students. That came into place in July, put into place this new direction that helps us to achieve the objectives of the cap in a different way. And we're seeing the impact of that now. As I said, a 30% reduction on applications for visas by international students in the last year. Now, just to add to that, so Peter Dutton made a vague comment in his budget reply the other day about how he's going to be tough again on international students. My challenge to him is, will he set caps for those private education providers that are donors to the Liberal Party? If he doesn't, he's going to say something about this soon, if he doesn't, then the question should be asked, why?
Why not introduce a test for international students through the ATAR system to lower the numbers of them coming here?
Well, we're doing it. I just answered that question. We're seeing a reduction there, of 30%, and in particular...
You're doing a test?
No. Well, we're reducing it through... Yeah, and we're achieving the objective that you've asked me about in another way. And that is through, number one, the fee, and number two, through that direction that sets a way that Home Affairs process those visas. So that is working now. It's seen a bigger reduction in the number of people coming here to do some of those vet courses than to do university courses.
You served in the last minority government, which was widely viewed as a bit of a disaster. How do you feel about serving in a government where you need the Greens again for confidence and supply? We
won't, because we won't be doing any deals with the Greens.
Well, you'll need someone for confidence and supply if you don't hit the magic number 76.
Well, we intend to hit that number. And
what if you don't?
Well, we're not even contemplating that, mate. We are seeking the support of the Australian people for a majority Labor government.
Jason Clare, thanks for your time.
Good on you, mate.